Venezuelan and Colombian presidents signed a partial trade agreement aiming to strengthen bilateral relations between the two countries. The Syrian government reported over 6,000 people dead and over 5,000 wounded as a consequence of the earthquakes that shocked the nation on February the 6th. Another train carrying toxic material derailed outside the U.S. city of Detroit, Michigan. It is the fifth such incident in the country in the last 2 weeks. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Ana Marrero from the teleSUR headquarters in Caracas, Venezuela. We begin with the news. Stay with us. Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro and his Colombian counterpart Gustavo Petro signed a partial trade agreement on Thursday during a meeting at the Atanasio Girardot International Bridge in the Venezuelan state of El Táchira. Both presidents celebrated the strengthening of the 20th partial scope agreement on the bilateral trade, which seeks to stimulate economic integration between the two countries. This agreement is an addition to the bilateral investment protection accord recently signed by both countries. The Colombian president stated that the relations between the two countries should never have been severed. The president points out that signing of the agreement is one more step towards the improvements of relations between all Latin American countries. In El Salvador, 6 out of 10 people will support a continuous re-election of President Nayib Bukele, revealed a survey this Thursday. The poll was conducted by the Centro de Estudios Ciudadanos of the Francisco Gavidia University. According to the results, 62.2% of those questions agreed with the continuous re-elections of the President Bukele. However, they also indicate that the ruling party will have obstacles in maintaining the predominance in the mayoralties or municipal councils. The sampling also indicates that 72.7% of Salvadorians consider that Bukele's government is on the right track, when 2.4% growth in the economy is projected, and a decrease in inflation for this year of 4.1%, lower than the 7.3% reached in 2022. The Confederation of Indigenous Nationalities of Ecuador, CONAIE, denounced that the government of Guillermo Lasso has lost legitimacy. CONAIE President Leonidas Issa said the country faces a delicate situation due to the scandal involving men close to President Lasso in alleged links with drug trafficking and the Albanian mafia. The indigenous leaders emphasized that the president has not been able to respond to the nation's needs, a fact that was demonstrated after losing the referendum. Caribbean leaders in the Bahamas agreed to reduce import costs during the 44th regular summit of the multilateral organizations. After the meeting, CARICOM Secretary General informed that the member states committed to reduce food import costs by 25% by 2025. The Secretariat noted that the Bahamas government has earmarked $100 million to the national agriculture in order to reduce its dependence on imports. The head of government of the Caribbean community addressed during the event various issues of interest for the future of the integrationist bloc, such as peace, regional security, and economic independence. Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau, announced that the CARICOM meeting in the Bahamas on Thursday a raft of new aid for Haiti that includes humanitarian assistance and Navy ships to help with surveillance. During a meeting of 20 Caribbean communities leaders, Trudeau said that Canada will provide $12.3 million in new humanitarian aid for the crisis revenge country and $10 million for the International Office of Migration. The Premier also promised to send Royal Canadian Navy ships to gather the intelligence and maintain a presence of the Asian coast, but stopped short of proposing the military force call for by Haiti's de facto Prime Minister Ariel Henry to quell the chaos in the Caribbean nation. Social and political organizations in Peru announced that they will continue to mobilize to insist on the resignation of Dina Boluarte. On Thursday, they are expected to hold a rally in Plaza 2 de Mayo in Lima as part of the marches and in the fine national stride. The organizations insist on demanding the closure of the Congress and the rejection of the repression actions of the government, as well as requesting the beginning of the constituent process. Meanwhile, the mobilizations have continued in the region of Puno, where the inhabitants assure that they will remain in the streets until Dina Boluarte resign and the closure of the Congress is achieved. In the midst of this scenario, political organizations are warning about the agenda of Dina Boluarte initiative with Fujimorismo. Peru's appointed President Dina Boluarte met on Wednesday with her far-right leader Keiko Fujimori at the government palace. The meeting between Boluarte, who on December the 7th was appointed president by Congress after dismissal of the constitutional president Pedro Castillo, and Fujimori, daughter of the dictator Alberto Fujimori, took place within the framework of the government's rounds of dialogues with the country's different political forces, while social movements remain in the streets in rejection of the Boluarte government, general elections, the closing of the Congress, and the release of Castillo, who is in prison accused of the alleged crimes of rebellion. Let's take a very short break now, but remember you can now follow us on our TikTok account, teleSUR English, in which you will be able to see news in different formats, news updates, and more. Stay tuned for more news. Welcome back to From the South. In Turkey, a 5.2 magnitude earthquake was recorded on Thursday night in Hatay province, with epicenter located 19 kilometers from the city of Usumbak. According to the U.S. Geological Survey data, the quake had a depth of 10 kilometers, collapsing several previously damaged buildings. The quake was felt in northwestern Syria and Lebanon. The Haitian region is one of the provinces most affected by the February 6 earthquake, in which more than 36,000 people were killed. Haitian Governor Ramin Goyan stated that they received no report of new damage after the recent quake. On Thursday, the humanitarian mission of the government of Venezuela continues to deliver food for the victims of the earthquake in Turkey. The Civil Protection team, made up of 25 search and rescue specialists, delivered a new batch of humanitarian aid that includes a shipment of 11 tons of food, as well as medicines and medical supplies for the assistance of the survivors in Yemen. At the same time, the Venezuelan humanitarian team informed about the delivery of another 11 tons for those affected in Syria, while explaining that the humanitarian supply to that Arab country is made difficult by the siege of terrorist groups and the sanctions maintained by the U.S. The Syrian government reported over 6,000 people dead and over 5,500 wounded in the country as a consequence of the earthquake that shook the nation on February the 6th. These are the latest updates provided by the Syrian authorities on Thursday. The search and rescue operations continue after the earthquake that affected 4 provinces. The government says that 11 days after the earthquake, they are advancing with the task of debris removal with the help of international teams, despite the sanctions imposed by the U.S. against the Syrian people. And another Syrian plane carrying relief aid for those affected by the earthquake arrived at Aleppo International Airport in Syria. The head of the Iranian Red Crescent Society, Pir Hossein Caliban, offered his condolences to the Syrian people over their difficult circumstances, while he prayed for mercy upon the victims and wished quick recovery for the wounded. He points out that the plane carries 25 tons of foodstuffs and tents. Caliban added this is the 8th plane provided by Iran to Syria, in addition to the rescue team and mobile hospital that were sent last week. The earthquake has struck 4 provinces in Syria have collapsed. The old city of Aleppo, whose emblematic buildings that back millennia was no spared. Our correspondent Hisham Wenus reported from Aleppo.
The earthquake did not spare the historic buildings of Aleppo's old town, which have withstood years of terrorist attacks. The extent of the damage to one of the country's most important archaeological sites is evident in cracked roofs and walls, collapsed facades, and collapsed buildings.
The earthquake was very strong. It had a large magnitude that affected the area surrounding the citadel. It caused the collapse of many houses and caused cracks in the roofs and walls of these ancient buildings that were unable to withstand the impact of the tremor.
The disaster is huge, as the earthquake registered 7.8 magnitude on the Richter scale. In addition to the terrible human life loss, it caused serious damage to our historical archaeological heritage in the ancient city of Aleppo, whose old houses are mostly built with limestone rock.
The citadel of Aleppo was also damaged by the earthquake. It is a masterpiece of medieval Islamic fortress architecture and a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The quake caused part of the Ottoman mill to collapse. Cracks and collapses in part of the Ottoman barracks and the northeastern defensive walls, and large parts of the dome of the minaret of the Ayyubid Mosque and the entrances to the citadel collapsed, among other things.
Many houses were damaged in this ancient area, including the citadel of the city, and let's hope that these historical monuments will be rebuilt and restored as soon as possible, and that the splendor of this ancient city and its historical archaeological remains will be restored.
Let us hope that the authorities and international organizations will come forward to help us repair the damage to the city of Aleppo, particularly the historic citadel of Aleppo and the historic buildings in the old city.
The earthquake also affected other heritage sites in the provinces of Hammer, Tartus, and the historic city of Palmyra. Regarding this, UNESCO expressed its concern. It said it would mobilize its experts to assess the damage and to secure and stabilize the affected sites. The historic citadel of Aleppo, like the old city, is an important part of Syria's thousands of years of civilized history. It is a heritage that remains despite the severe damage caused by the recent earthquake and the long terrorist war imposed on Syria 12 years ago. Syrians say they are sparing no effort to preserve it.
teleSUR, Aleppo, Syria.
In Lebanon, dozens of demonstrators organized protests on Thursday after the national party hit a record low in a deepening economic crisis. People have staged similar protests in recent months to demand access to their savings from banks, which have been repeatedly closed for days. This month, the Lebanese Banks Association declared an indefinite strike, claiming that the crisis was affecting the entire financial system. Lebanon's economic crisis has impacted on citizens' quality of life in a country where poverty rate have reached 80% of the population, according to the United Nations. Lebanon's cash-strapped banks have imposed tight restrictions on withdrawals, preventing depositors from accessing their savings, especially those depositing in U.S. dollars. Thousands of journalists and right activists protested in the Tunisian capital on Thursday, accusing the state of repression and attempts to intimidate the media. The protests, organized by the Journalists' Union, came 3 days after police arrested Northern Boutard, director of a popular private radio station. The station has often been critical of President Kais Saied, who in 2021 sank the government, froze the parliament, and seized almost total power in a move that rivals have called a coup. And we have more news coming up after a financial break, so don't go away. Welcome back. In the U.S., another train carrying toxic material derailed in the state of Michigan. It is the fifth such incident in the country in the last 2 weeks. The train containing toxic materials. The train collapsed in Van Buren, a suburb of Detroit. The state police said there were no injuries and the area was not under emergency conditions. However, they are urging residents to avoid the surrounding areas due to the investigation. A total of 6 cars were believed to be involved in the incident. The company responsible for the derailment that caused an environmental disaster in the state of Ohio did not attend a meeting with residents of the area, citing security concerns. In this regard, Norfolk Southern assures that by not attending the meeting, it was protecting the integrity of its workers under the pretext of alleged violence attacked by residents of East Palestine. In this sense, the inhabitants of this locality continue to demand answers 13 days after the accident involving a railway loaded with toxic substances that caused the death of animal species and has caused various physical suffering to the citizens.
We are trying to give our citizens information regarding this event. Everyone is concerned. I'm concerned. However, it's not Norfolk Southern here. It's the EPA and the people who have been working with us to try to get our citizens back in their homes safely.
We all just want answers. I think that's what everybody wants here, just answers. I honestly feel that East Palestine, police, fire brigades, all the responders, they don't have the answers to give us because I don't think they know. They don't get the right answers either.
An underwater robot investigation of the Titan's glacier in Antarctica has yielded new information about the cracking process. The studies were published on Wednesday in the science journal Nature. For 5 days, the underwater robot Christian Icefan took images and made measurements of water temperatures, salinity, and oxygen content of ocean currents. Researchers discovered an accelerated melting not expected due to the warm salt water penetrating the crevices. Scientists warn that Taiwan, known as the Domsins Glacier, could collapse within the next 5 years. In South Africa, after a week of floods caused by heavy rains, the death toll has risen to 12. The bad weather, which is expected to last for the rest of the week, struck the east, north, and south, claiming life of 4 of the country's 9 provinces, says the Ministry of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, COGTA. Ludwig Meidhal, COGTA's spokesman, declared that the famed Kruger National Park, the largest reserve in South Africa, was badly affected. Heavy rains started to fall last week after a cold snap in the middle of the austral summer. According to the South African Weather Services, some areas saw more than 20 centimeters of rain in one day. In this context, the South African government is offering assistance to those affected by the floods.
These people have been very afraid. They were afraid of not having food. Their houses are damaged. They didn't know what they were going to eat, but now we are thankful that their government has arrived, and they brought food with them, and this will help us to get by. I'm thankful.
Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari on Thursday defined a current stop that sparked protests and cash shortages, but ordered coal small denomination 200 naira notes to remain in circulation in a bid to ease scarcities. Nigeria has been struggling with shortage in physical cash since the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, began to swap all bills of local naira currency for the new redesigned ones, leading to the shortfall in banknotes. The scarcity of cash has triggered violent protests in major cities as angry and frustrated bank customers attacked and vandalized vines and blocked roads. And we have come to the end of this news brief. You can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on our socials. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and on Instagram as well. For Telesur English, I'm from the South, I'm Ana Marrero, and thank you for watching.